Today I'm going to talk about this Aros RC T-33. It's a really small and extremely lightweight EDF RC airplane. So it does feature a 50mm EDF engine with lots of blades, so it does supposedly have a really good EDF sound. It is really simple to assemble because you have a few screws for the main wing, and then you have to glue on these, like what do you call them, on the edge, and also the rear stabilizer. But I mean, it's a really simple model. Inside I have actually an AR630 receiver, and this one runs on, I think it is spec says for 1300 milliamp battery, but usually I fly this on a 2200 milliamp battery. So we'll just go out and do a maiden on this T-33. So I was a little bit scared to do hand launching. I did use safe this time on the AR630 receiver. And this is a 50mm EDF. It sounds kind of similar to the Aros Viper. It's quite a speedy RC airplane.
Time remaining 4 minutes.
It is also somewhat agile on the roll axis. It looks really sweet also with these kind of missile-like wing tips. And if you really push it, I think you have a really nice fast roll rate also. So this light then is on a 2200 milliamp battery. So it's a little bit more than the, according to the manual, where you're supposed to use 1300, but I used 2200 on my Viper. Then I can fly for almost or like 5 minutes, which is a good flight time. And this also balanced on the CG mark, according to the manual. It's a really sweet EDF sound as well.
Time remaining 3 minutes.
It does like fly like the Viper in a sense. I think this one is more visible than the Viper in the shape of the RC airplane. So it surely does look a little bit cooler than the Viper in my opinion. I mean, glides just as good as the Viper. So on the downhill, then you just you don't have to use throttle. You can more or less just kill it. But this one doesn't feature a rudder, which is sadly missing, because you can do more things when you have a rudder. So this bank and jank RC airplane, where you just bank and pull the elevator to turn it. As you can see, it just glides for a really long time. I have just a slight breeze today. It doesn't seem to influence this
30 seconds.
T-33. Timer is almost up, and with these EDF RC airplanes, it's just best to get them down before the battery is depleted. Just losing some altitude, and more or less killing the throttle and let it glide down. This is a really nice looking model, this T-33, but and I think when you really have a good flight, I think it flies great. It is, I mean, just quite speedy, and you can easily just toss this one around in the air and do things. It's just a 3-channel RC airplane, so you don't have a rudder on this one, which is always a little bit bad, because when you're about to land, you cannot correct, which I think is maybe the most important thing. And of course, like stall turns will be really difficult if you don't have a rudder, and knife edges, of course. But I also experienced that this one, just as almost all my Arrows RC airplanes, it has tendency to sometimes just freak out and become like a spinning mess. And I've experienced the exact same behavior on my Arrows Viper, which actually means that I cannot trust the Viper or this one. I think when you fly them and everything works great, it's just fun RC airplanes to fly. And I'm not really sure, because I mean, I believe that I fly all my RC airplanes, regardless of brands, the same way. So if it's E-flite, if it's FMS, if it's OMP, if it's Arrows, if it's like X-fly, so regardless of brand, I try to do the same maneuvers. And the crash I had with this one, it wasn't really the first time I experienced this squirrely behavior, because a couple of times previously to this, the crash I had with this one, I did actually have the same behavior. And during the crash, I did actually did a split S. So I went in this direction, I flipped it upside down, and then just pulled the elevator. And this is a move you really can do quite easily. Just flip this one, and when you're going down, you actually create a lot of lift. So I mean, usually this maneuver is just super easy on any RC airplane, regardless of it's, you know, a biplane or high wing or low wing or whatever. But during this kind of, you know, standard split S maneuver, this one just became a squirrely spinning mess out of it, and I couldn't save it, so it went down like in tall grass, seaweed grass, like in a nearby pond, and I had to just step out in the water to save this RC airplane. So thankfully, the only damage really was like a piece of the foam got ripped up, so I had actually used some hot glue just to put this one in place, and just minor compression marks on the fuse. So the damage wasn't really anything to be concerned about, but the flying behavior of this one, because it is a hand launcher, and I also during some my hand launching attempts, you know, somehow I couldn't create lift on this RC airplane. So hand launching is something I really don't like, but this one, it's the only option. And I think when you do have a good hand launch, it does work great. But this kind of odd behavior, and I experienced this one, as I said, on the Viper, on like the Warbirds, T-28, the Bearcat, the Mustang. So it's a really odd thing that this happens only to my Arrows RC planes, because I've never experienced this on any FMS or E-flite RC airplane, which is a really strange thing, because I think if you look at how this one is constructed, it is really similar to FMS RC airplanes. It has a super great build Of course, you have to glue in these wing pieces and the rear stabilizer, but I mean it blends together so easy, and I think the quality is also really great on all the Arrows RC airplanes. But apart from the Arrows Bigfoot, I had this kind of strange behavior, and I really cannot figure it out. If it's, I think I have it really correctly balanced on the CG. And usually I have a lot of expo. I've tried to reduce rates also, and just be a little more gentle. But I mean, it's just so strange and odd that it's only Arrows RC airplanes. And I don't know if other users of like this T-33 then experience something similar and don't share it, because I mean I think that if I experience this and I'm not doing like these super crazy maneuvers, so I'm using the same aerobatic and flying kind of routine as I do with all my RC airplanes, but the Arrows one are the only one that they experience this kind of crazy behavior. And so far I haven't really experienced this one on the or just to a little extent on the Arrows RC Marlin. But it does actually work much better on the Marlin. But I really can't figure it out. So in the end, I cannot really trust this RC airplane, which is really sad because I think it looks great. When it flies good, it's just a really fun one to fly. So, I mean, it's a little bit sad, but that's my opinion about this Arrows RC T-33.